This started when I was at my childhood friend's apartment for what was supposed to be a fun little movie night. We hadn't hung out in a while, and we were catching up. Her place was cozy, a little disorganized, and full of girly decor. We were in our comfiest sweatpants, and about to watch princess movies. Her apartment isn't the most tidy. Things are a bit scattered around. We decided on ordering a pizza for dinner. She mentioned that Sherwood, someone I hadn't met yet, would bring the pizza over. At first, I wasn't happy to hear that. I thought that she meant she'd invited over other friends, specifically a boy, over to join us, which wasn't what I had in mind, but I was in for a surprise. Sherwood turned out to be the delivery guy for the night. He wasn't joining us. When he got to the apartment, there was this awkward air about him. He was obviously nervous, fumbling a bit with the pizza boxes, and not quite making eye contact. My friend introduced us quickly, and it was clear from her overly thankful demeanor that Sherwood did a lot more for her than just fetch dinner. After handing us the pizza, there was a brief moment of forced small talk. My friend was super nice to him, despite his awkwardness. He hasn't been the best conversationalist and seemed really out of place. Then, Sherwood asked for my number. I was in a tough spot because our mutual friend was sitting right there, so I gave it to him. We chatted for maybe 5 minutes before my friend gave him the cue to leave, with something like, "Well, thanks for dropping this off." He seemed to get the hint. We both gave him a hug before my best friend said something like, "Drive safe," giving him the other cue to leave. When I asked my friend what that was all about, she basically explained that Sherwood was her unpaid personal assistant. He did her grocery shopping, dropped off pizza, and did all the other stuff. I think Sherwood was just a really lonely guy, desperate for interaction, especially female interaction. My friend and I were both very young and immature back then. We were about 23, and I think we both knew something was seriously wrong with Sherwood. It was a little hard to articulate, because we couldn't point out exactly what his problem was. Sherwood started a group chat with my friend and I. He just sent a meme or two every week. It felt like he was trying to stay relevant without being intrusive. Maybe he was just used to being sidelined or even blocked by other girls in the past. It felt like he was trying to make me remember him, but also carefully trying not to give me a reason to block him. I of course can't speak on his behalf. That's just what it felt like. Sherwood would also offer to help with errands. The first time I said, "Thanks for asking, but no." He asked every weekend after that. One day, I made the mistake of accepting his help. I knew better. I had recently found a great deal for a new washing machine on Craigslist, but I had no idea how to pick it up, let alone install it. When I mentioned it in the chat, Sherwood excitedly volunteered to take up the whole thing. He handled the whole pickup and installation like a total champ, which saved me so much hassle. I tried to pay him for his efforts, because I wanted to show appreciation, but he wouldn't accept any money. I kept insisting. Eventually, he suggested that I could repay him by joining him for a hike. I was wondering why. I was uneasy about this. It felt a bit too personal, and almost like it could be mistaken for a date. But Sherwood framed it as nothing more than a friendly outing, like a transaction to balance out the favor. So, I agreed to the hike. I rationalized it by telling myself it was fair trade. He installed the washing machine for me, and it was genuinely a form of payment. Especially since I didn't think he had too many friends. This hike maybe felt like a way for me to give him some companionship. I thought it might be nice to help him. Part of me was still uneasy about spending time with him in such an isolated area. The day of the hike, Sherwood picked this trail that was nearby. I'd been there before, and it was gorgeous. As we walked along together, he chatted about ordinary things like work, the weather, and his hobbies. Everything seemed normal until he suggested we go off the main path to see something special he wanted to share. I was just wondering what that could even mean. We reached the secluded spot, and there was a dead body. My heart was pounding so violently as Sherwood stood there, so eerily calm and nonchalant. This casualness in his demeanor made me feel so much more uneasy. It felt like he wasn't just showing me a dead body, but he was also revealing this dark side of him. It smelled terrible, but not like in the movies. I didn't know how long it's been there for, and I'm no biologist, but my guess is that it smelt a lot worse. But now, it had gone down. At that moment, I mumbled some excuse about needing to go back quickly and started walking briskly towards the main path. I was urging him to follow me. I thought maybe this was some twisted mind game, like a way to intimidate me or show me that he wasn't just some harmless little boy. Maybe he was trying to send a message, and it said, "You should know I'm familiar with things like this." And there's another possibility. Maybe he just wanted me to think about him more. Sometimes when I talk to people, I feel like they only notice me for the time and that we're together. And then they won't think of me again until the next time we meet. It's possible Sherwood felt that way with me. And maybe he thought showing me a dead body could make him less forgettable. But I still have no idea. On the surface, he seemed oblivious to how inappropriate this was. And we walked back together. I was in full fight or flight mode, instinctively looking around to see where the other hikers or rangers were. Anyone who could make me feel like I wasn't alone. The moment I spotted someone else on the trail, I called out, not to expose him, but to just ask for directions to the parking area. I wanted to make sure Sherwood and I wouldn't be left alone together. So, I asked the gentleman to walk us back to the parking lot. I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I kept pretending like I was confused about his directions. And he eventually agreed to just walk us there. Getting help from that guy was a way of re-anchoring myself to safety and normality while I was still under the shock of what he had shown me. We got to the parking area, and there I called my friend and told her I was with Sherwood. I suggested he could drop me off with her and that we'd be there in 20 minutes. Sherwood agreed. That was my way of making sure that if anything happened, it was on record that Sherwood was the last person to have been in contact with me. Also, I immediately texted my friend what had happened to get that on record too. When I got to her apartment, we said thanks to Sherwood and kindly told him to go away. I'd already told her through text, but then I started going all into detail. The fact that the body had insects, the fact that the face was decomposing, but still somewhat recognizable. Her reaction was pure horror, not just about the dead body, but how nonchalant he was, and how he had treated the whole situation. She confessed she always sensed something off about him, even though she never imagined anything that disturbing. We both agreed that we had to remove him from our lives. She admitted she felt stuck and she'd become too reliant on him to just fire him cold turkey. We planned out how we would do it. It was a gradual phasing out plan. We would limit our times with him to when others were present and never alone. We would slowly reduce our responses to texts. I would never ask him for his help again, and my friend would ask for less and less help. Sherwood kept texting during the weekends, offering to run errands or asking if we needed anything, to which my friend would reply, "I'm trying to work on being independent, but you've really been such a help." Eventually, as my friend started dating someone new, she introduced Sherwood to her boyfriend, to which Sherwood never contacted her after that. And don't worry, I did call the cops the same night of the incident, but it took about a month to hear more news about it. It was around a month later, a news report confirmed discovering a dead body in that area where Sherwood had taken me hiking. They did make an arrest, but it wasn't Sherwood. They arrested someone else that Sherwood was following on Instagram. So we have no idea if he was connected to the murder. This happened about 3 years ago, when I was about 14 or 15. At the time, I was making pocket money by mowing the lawn of my mom's condominium. The lawnmower was kept in a small storage building, where only I and the landlord had keys to. For some backstory about the building, it didn't have any windows and only one door. It consisted of only one room, where the lawnmower and other gardening stuff was kept. The building's inner and outer roof had a small space in between them. I wouldn't really call it an attic, just a space. The roof inside was made only of spare planks, which meant you could get into the said space. Anyway, one Sunday, I needed to mow the lawn, so I took the keys and headed to the storage. The door was locked as usual, so I opened it with the keys. As I stepped into the storage, and with no particular reason, I looked up. My heart dropped. Up on the old planks, there was a man, just looking down. I looked up for only a second or two, and he looked back at me. His clothes were dirty, and his face was covered in scars. I didn't want him to do anything, so I pretended as if I hadn't seen him. I took the lawnmower, walked out the door, and closed it behind me. I immediately ran to our apartment and called the police. They arrived in about 5 minutes. The police went in, and a couple of minutes later, they brought out the man in handcuffs. The man was trying to climb back into the roof while holding a pair of garden shears. It was truly horrifying. Who knows what could have happened if I didn't look up while entering the storage. Me and my mom did move out sometime after. It's my first time traveling to the city for a concert I wanted to attend. Since it is my first time traveling alone, I feel like the safest spot for me to just relax and read some manga is in the city library while I wait for my hotel check-in time to come. Well, I guess I picked a bad spot to read, because people kept trying to talk to me, which I'm fine with, but I'm too shy to just tell them to go away. One person sat at a table across from me and asked me where I was from and who I came with. Obviously I lied, even though I assumed this person was an older lady. They were wearing a hat and thick coat, so I really couldn't tell. I was a lot nicer to them than I should have been. I did also assume this was an older lady and was the chattier type. She said I looked young and have nice hair and stuff. She also asked if I was from here and where my parents are. I am an adult. Well, turns out this isn't a lady. As I got closer to them, he came closer and comes to sit next to me. He then asked me for my number, and I stupidly gave out my actual number. He wrote his down and his name, and asked me to write down my name as well. But here I did put a fake name. He then gave me his phone to put in my info, and compares the written one to what I put into his phone. A real number and fake name. I couldn't bring myself to refuse since none of the librarians were looking our way, and he was very big, so I didn't want to make him mad or something. Then he turned to leave, and he asked me when he could call me. All I was able to say is, "Oh, just whenever," and let out a bit of a chuckle. Obviously, I tried to block him when he called me later, so I hope he assumes my number was fake too. But as he left, he asked if I had a Facebook, to which I said no. And then he asks to take a photo of me. He asked if he could take some pictures, since I don't have Facebook. I nervously laughed and said no. And honestly, what was that even about? I don't think I'll visit a big city library again. I'll just go to Barnes & Noble's next time, or something. I work at a retail grocery chain, and in the store, there is a liquor department which is sectioned off from the rest of the grocery store. I was working in that department when a man came in. He purchased a few alcohol shots, made conversation with me, and everything was normal. Until he pulled an axe out of his backpack. I was completely shocked, to be honest. It seemed really odd to say, but seeing this very strange man rambling about how nobody would dare mess with him because of his axe. He held it out in the open and kept mentioning how sharp the blade was. He cut his receipt in half on the counter in front of me, just to demonstrate its sharpness. He was mentioning how it could cut through bone and flesh. I tried not to escalate the situation, and didn't really react or say much about the axe. I'm ashamed to say, I sort of froze and didn't tell him to put it away or to leave. I wanted to keep everything calm and get him out as quick as possible. I did let my supervisor know immediately once he left. She pulled me aside and asked me to describe the man. A security officer was able to identify the man on camera. My store manager ended up contacting the police. I gave a police officer my recounting of the events, and he informed me he spoke with the individual outside in the parking lot, and they trespassed him from the store. It was incredibly unnerving being in that situation. It was an isolated area with someone who seemed to be mentally unstable, holding a huge axe.